And whenever you turn it on, you always tell everybody to get in the habit of hitting the vibrate function. Just test it first. Sometimes the light it'll turn on, but then turn off. It's a habit. So you're going to put that on, and then walking around, the dog's not listening. They're just like really high on the collar, and they're like wondering why, and it's because of that. Vibrate pager, that one. So if you grab the box on his neck and hit pager, yep, so we know that's on. So if you're ever working with Pablo and he's not responding and you're like maybe really high on the collar, just things doesn't seem right, I'll stop, grab that box, hit the pager function. Sometimes the collar dies if people aren't aware of it, or they just forgot to turn it on, things like that. And just so you know, the battery life on that remote does not pertain to the collar. Okay, that's the remote's battery life. The collar is its own. Green is fully charged, orange is running low, red means charging now. Yeah. This is a 2-hour quick charge system, so you don't, if that happens, you put it on for 30 minutes, you're gonna get a good amount of juice. And then, right here, sir. And then, you're good to go. Okay? Any questions about that? No? Alright. So what we're gonna do first, so you saw how to fit the collar. Did you see the one with perception level? I don't think so.
We watched like the beginning of it.
Okay, so we have 3 types of levels. One is contact level, perception level, and then working level. Okay, so this is of course a muscle stimulator, much like a TENS unit. So, yeah, I know, but lots of distractions. Hi, we're training. First we want to get our connection level. Okay, what do we have on the remote? 5? Let's put like 10, 15-ish. That's typically where dogs start to feel it in the beginning. All right, and then you're gonna hit the bumpy one on the side, which is your nick function. That's what we're gonna be using for training. Continuous, I'll explain it later on, but just worry about the nick, okay? We're gonna look at Pablo, and we're gonna, when you hear me say tap, you're gonna be pressing your button. Another little distraction here, but tap, 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 tap. So no response here, okay? And then we're gonna bump it, let's go to 20. And you land on 21, 22, that's okay. Tap, up, tap. There we go. You see that big jump, right? Let's go down. Let's try going to 19 here. Yep. Let's go down to 16. Yep. All right. So you see how we keep getting these bigger reactions, right? And we kept going down. So earlier, what was your first number at?
10.
10, and then we went to 15, and then 20, and then he felt it, and then we went back down again, right?
Yeah.
So because he's got that thicker coat of fur, one of the drawbacks to e-collar, and you get used to it as you use it more, is just connection, okay? Which is why we want that snug fit, especially for a guy like him.
Yeah.
He's got that thicker fur. Is he on the standard probes?
No, we got the long ones.
You got the longer ones? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So that's gonna help tremendously in terms of getting consistent contact. So whenever you start your training, or whenever, going forward or stuff like that, one thing I would suggest to everybody is that you start with finding that number first, making sure you have connection. So like right now we have 16, and we're gonna start with that. And people assume like 16 is just a number, right? And then maybe one day you don't have that connection. You might be like at 26 before you get that connection. So I always want to get it first.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, the first half of your walk is going to be a pain in the butt because of course you have to do it. Okay?
Right.
Any questions about that? No. So we got connection really quick. So just so that you know, connection is simply the contraction. And like Pablo could be staring at something and you see this happening, but he's completely not phased, right? That's connection. Perception is when you see like a little bit of connection looking around, and then working is, okay, what do I need to do to stop this? You see a bit more concern, okay? We always push for that working level because it makes your life a lot easier, okay? People tend to want to operate as low as possible because they think they're hurting their dog, right? And I tell them you're not hurting your dog, the dog's not yelping or anything like that. But the reason why we want to start with that concern right away is it's what makes your obedience important right off the bat, right? So like if I say sit, I just went boop, no argument, right? And I'm sure maybe you've experienced it or seen someone going sit, 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 and then like making their dog sit and all that stuff. That's an argument, right?
Yeah.
I just want to say the command, the dog does it, and then we're good. So I avoid any frustration. There's no frustration from the dog because we're not barking and yelling at each other, things like that. Okay. Questions? Alrighty. So the first thing we're going to start off with today is the healing exercise, which is the leash walking stuff. Okay. This is what's going to help address any leash pulling. If he sees a dog when he's passing, he's like, "Hey, I'm Pablo," and just kind of going up to greet him. Now I know Pablo's completely friendly and stuff,
Not
but
all the dogs are.
Not tall dogs?
No, he is, but not
Not
all
all
the
their
other
dogs. Right. So we don't want him to put himself in a bad situation, right?
Yeah.
So even good dogs need training, and we're just putting things to permission now. Okay, so I don't want Pablo to assume that he could just greet any dog. It's when I give him permission. Okay, so this exercise is very simple, and I'll demonstrate it for you, and then I'll walk you through. Okay. So I train traditionally on the left. Is that okay by you guys?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So what we're gonna do here is, if we have Pablo here, it's our job to teach Pablo that this is where he wants to be. Okay. So if we're walking, Pablo's most likely going to forge ahead. When he does this, I want you to just immediately make a 180 turn to your right. Okay. So he passes, and you would just go like this. And if you're gonna pass again, you go like this, and it's just back and forth. Okay. So if you're doing it correctly, you should stay within the same path. Okay. Now, when you're doing this turn, we're also gonna add in the remote. Okay. So Pablo passes. I start turning and remoting simultaneously. So tap, 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 tap. And the moment Pablo comes here, I stop. I keep walking. Pablo passes, turn, tap, 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 tap. Pablo's here, I stop. And repeat. Okay. Now I'll coach you through it, but it's that basic exercise. Okay. And this is why finding that working level is so important. Because if you're too low, you'll be going back and forth all day.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're gonna keep the leash slack. So most people or most trainers try to teach heel by letting the dog pull, and they'll either pop them on the prong or remote them and say no. And when the dog jumps back, they'll say heel. Okay. And it's, in my opinion, the worst method to use to train. It doesn't work very well. Okay. Because it requires Pablo to understand or associate that when we're saying no, we're telling him don't pull us. Okay. He doesn't know what the word pull means. He doesn't know that pulling is a bad thing. Okay, because it's not a bad thing, it's an annoying thing, right?
Yeah.
So then when he comes here and we say the word heel, that then requires Pablo to kind of tie those things together, and it's too much. He doesn't think that complex, okay? So the way I teach heel is, again, with that, what I call a turnaround method, is for Pablo, if I'm Pablo and I get ahead of you and I'm like, hey, I don't like this annoying thing, and then eventually either the leash tension or the annoying thing is gonna make Pablo go like this, then he's gonna see you going the other way. He's gonna go, oh, and just catch up, and then it stops. But then, because he's not trained, he's gonna go again. It's gonna start happening. He's like, what's going on? Oh, Dad's going that way. He catches up, then it stops. So then he starts learning as a communicator. And he's thinking, every time I feel this, Mom or Dad are going the other way. Maybe I should start paying attention. Okay, and then we start associating, when you feel this, it means to come here. Okay, so I call it the correct. So I'm not against the correcting of the pulling, but we have to show the dog what they're supposed to do instead. So when he sees you going the opposite way and he ties those dots together, you'll start to see within a few turns, he's gonna start watching you a lot more. Okay? Questions? Okay, are you gonna go first? Sure. All right, so what you're gonna do here is go to position Pablo on your left, so just stick to the side, go and relax your arm. Good, and what I want you to do is, as much as possible, refrain from using too much leash pulling, okay? We're gonna need it here and there, but if we're wanting to transition things to the remote, because if you go back to the leash pulling, you're actually going to create more pulling. Okay? So with Pablo to your left, what I'm going to have you do is go and make an immediate right. Yep, and forward, tap, tap, tap. Good, and relax. Turn, tap this way, good, and then good. Keep moving, and relax. And turn, yeah. Good, forward. Let's go and dip down. We're at what now? 16. Let's go down to 12. Good. And relax. And forward. Tap. Good. Turn. Tap. Forward. Good. Turn. Tap. Good. Turn. Tap. Tap. Good. Forward. Good. Turn. Tap, forward, good. Turn, tap, forward. Good. And forward. Turn, tap, forward. Good, and forward. Turn, tap, forward, tap, forward. Yep. Here. Stop. Good. So you see how he's crossing over you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why that is?
Trying to hurt me.
Trying to hurt you? A good guess. But it's not hurting.
Just wants to know when he's gonna move, when I move, so he can move.
Yes. Right? Because you keep making these kinds of turns, right? So he's crossing over and angling to the right because he's like, if you turn, I'm going to see it right away. Okay, so I can avoid that tap. So here, all you did was go back and forth, and I could tell right when he locked in, because once you turn and slow down, he kind of tapped and immediately fell back into position. So he's starting to associate that this is where he's wanting to be. Okay, so whenever we're working with Pablo, again, it should never be an argument. This is why it's so important to find that right number. Okay, now we did go from 16 to 12. So the way I define what's high and too high is his response to things. Okay, so some dogs can be super jumpy, and some dogs will take the hit but then move very quickly. And what I'm wanting is the very quick movement. I don't want so much of the jumpiness. Okay, I don't want yelping. I don't want rolling on the ground, and ideally not a lot of jumpiness. In some cases you can't avoid it. But here, he takes the hit, but then he starts to move in, and he's starting to associate, oh, the left leg is where I'm wanting to be. Okay. Now we've said nothing here. We didn't say Pablo, we didn't say here, we didn't say heel, we didn't say any of that stuff. Your communicator is your remote. Okay. Now as humans, we're used to sound, right? Like the way I'm teaching you is through sound. Dogs don't teach that way. Okay. They teach through physicality. Biting, nipping, and stuff like that. A little bit of growling, maybe snarling, barking, stuff like that, but it's a very limited vocabulary. I think dogs have like 10, maybe 12 sounds that they make. So it's super low, right? It's the physicality part. So e-collar is essentially like a bite on a button, right? So you're kind of nipping at him and you say, no, bud, not that way, this way, right? You pass again, nope, not that way, this way, right? And you're just nipping at these little things and you're teaching them, don't do that. And the way you're moving is telling them, do this instead. Does that make sense? So this is why, I'm not against using food for training. It's great for puppies under 6 months, but I know whenever anybody's gonna need any kind of reliable obedience, I just jump to this, okay? Because it's the dog's language. Every case that I work with, maybe the longest has been 15, 20 minutes to teach it, but it's more so because of behavioral issues. Real stable standard dogs like Pablo here pick it up very quickly because it's his language, okay? Does this make sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay? So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna repeat that process. What we're going to start to add in is changes of pace. Okay, so speeding up and slowing down. So Pablo's job, and for your reference, his right shoulder should line up with your left leg. Okay, if his right shoulder were to be even just an inch past that left leg, that's considered forging. Okay, now people tend to judge heel by my dog doesn't pull that much, but heel is not about not pulling a whole lot. Heel is a very black and white position of right shoulder to your left leg, okay? So if Pablo were to be a little bit ahead of you and he's in a heel command, we would not allow that, okay? Because that's gonna undo your training. Now, as we go along, maybe you just want to go on a leisurely walk with Pablo and you don't care to have the tight heel within that moment. It's okay that you would let him do that, but I wouldn't use the word heel. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're turning that, so think of obedience as clocking Pablo into work, right? You say sit, you say down, you say heel, he's clocked in, he's working now, right? It's like right now, I'm on the clock. I'm working for you guys, I'm not on my phone, I'm not drinking a beer, I'm not smoking a doobie or anything like that. I'm working, right?
Yeah.
Same thing for Pablo. When he's in this command, he's not sniffing the ground, he's not running to greet other dogs, he's not peeing on every tree that he sees, he's on the clock. And then when you decide, hey, we've made it to Oz Park, you've done a great job, Pablo, break. And then we would release him and he could do his doggy thing, okay? So I'm not trying to make a robot here. We're gonna keep personality and stuff, but we're wanting the control when we need it so that we can give him the freedom when we want it, okay? Questions about any of that stuff? Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing again. Now when you do your turns, right, what I'm having you do is if Pablo does pass and you make that turn, it's just keep your momentum, okay? So you're gonna try to make it as fluid as possible so that this way, if Pablo gets stuck, and he's over here and you're tapping him, when he turns, he already sees you in motion, then it's much easier to run and catch up to you, okay? If you see him start to pass a bit, assume to just turn and start remoting, okay? So if I see it, I'll tell you, but if you see it before me, feel free to do that correctional turn, okay? And forward. job, Cap. Good. Go ahead and pick up your pace a little bit. Turn. Tap forward. Tap forward. Tap. Tap. There you go. Good. Right there. Yep, good move, good move. Yep. Slow walk again. Good, slow stop. Good. So all your turns were correct, right? Because every time you turn, he kept going. So that tells you, so if you're turning, you want to see if he's getting it or not, you can always check in on him. And each one that you did, he was not paying attention because he kept going in this direction. Okay? So if he was paying attention, when you started that turn, because this is a, a training session, dogs can have more focus, you should be able to catch that. Okay? And when we apply this to real life, we're going to make a couple of adjustments, but that's just one thing I want you to keep in mind. So when I had you slow down the first time, he passed you, right? So if he wasn't paying attention, you pivoted, you turned, you tapped, you backed that way, that was correct. Then you came back again, and I had you slow down again. And then what happened? He just slowed down, right? He stopped with you. So what we're teaching Pablo now is to pay attention to who's at the other end of the leash. Okay? So if he's being mindful of you, and we'll talk more about body language and movements, he should be able to match what you're doing. Okay? Because this is a very controlled in the sense of you're just going back and forth within, 100 feet, right? Obviously, when you're in an actual walk, it's going to change a tiny bit, but this is what it should look like. When you come to a stop, Pablo, if you look at his shoulder, right shoulder to your left leg, and that leash is completely slack, right? So there's no physicality in terms of the leash. It's all the remote, and it's all about mental game. Okay? We're going to do one more run, and then we'll swap hands. Okay? Whenever you're ready. Correct. Yep. Good move. Pull to your left here and tap. Keep moving forward. You got it. Right there. Good. Try slowing again. Slow and swiftly, go ahead and pick up your pace. Try a slow turn. Good, forward. So right there, you see how you forged a bit?
Yeah.
Go ahead and come to a stop. So we lost him a tiny bit right there. Do you know why that is?
You got distracted?
By who?
Yeah.
Guy. Mom.
Yeah.
He wanted to go to mom. So you see right now, he's looking at her?
Yeah.
And it's when you keep that stop, that's why now isn't parallel to that left leg.
Yeah.
Okay? So I saw you thinking about it where you're like, do I correct? But then I told you like do this instead. So I wanted to point that out. Okay? So it's not uncommon, especially with dogs, that they'll like see the other owner and they're like, oh mom, they want to go to them and stuff like that. Sometimes it's due to stress. Other times it's just them being a little bit distracted, but you can use that to your advantage. Okay? This would have, like, if you would have corrected that, it wouldn't have any negative effect on your relationship. Okay? You're just saying, okay, Pop, I know mom's right there, but you're with me right now. Okay? So we'll try one more quick run and then we'll swap. Okay?
Okay.
Go ahead. Turn. Light, hold your left cap. Good. And relax. Good. Turn. Go ahead and slow to a stop there. That's okay. Go ahead and take 5 steps. Alright, so he got himself. It's okay. 3 steps. Good. 1 big step. Good. Okay. So that first one caught him off guard a little bit because he was expecting a longer walk, right? But right away he caught himself and then returned to that left side. Because right now left side has been safe space. Okay? And he started to look at you a lot. Okay? Now, as you go progress along with this exercise, in the beginning it's not uncommon to see a lot of this kind of like, what's mom and dad doing? It's not permanent. Okay? At some point he'll learn, like, I don't need to stare at you the whole time. I can look and enjoy the environment. I just have to watch what you're doing through my peripheral. Okay? So dogs have a wider peripheral range than humans do. So as we advance and we start incorporating body language movements, you're going to see how perceptive they are. Okay? Because people tend to think that the looking thing is part of the command, and in competition stuff, where like you're in the ring, it is, but for real life, it's not applicable. Okay? Any questions so far about that stuff? Okay? You ready to try? All right. So we're going to swap handlers. Now. Yep. Oh, are you defending?
No.
Oh, okay. Just go and relax. There you go.
Better using my left.
For healing on the left, most right-handed people think they would train the dog on the right side. It's actually harder.
Yeah.
It's left side is easier if you're left-handed, and if you're left-handed, right side is easier. Okay. So, as a visual, do you see how we have this little loop here? This is good. So you want to have it roughly where Pablo's armpit falls, because when he's walking, if it's any lower than that, the dog's going to step over. Exactly. Okay. So this way you have it nice and slack to allow Pablo the capacity to make mistakes, but also not worrying about him getting tripped up and all that stuff. Okay. So instead of moving just straight forward, I'm going to actually have you just pivot out to your back or to your right. Did you have any questions about the turns and tapping and stuff like that?
No.
Okay, and it's going to be the bumpy button, of course, whenever you need it.
Yep.
And go ahead and start with a turn to your right and forward. Good. Keep forward. Good turn. Yep, good move. Yep, forward. Good job. Turn again. Keep forward, tap. Let's fix the leash real quick. Because he jumped and it got underneath him, it's okay. So if he jumps on you like that, I'm going to have you keep your movement, but give a tap for the jump, okay? Go ahead and take up just a tiny bit of slack. Probably like where that knot is. There you go. Perfect. Good. Go ahead and pick up your pace. Now slow. Good. Slow turn. Yep. Go ahead and pick up your pace again. Go fairly brisk pace. Light pull to your left. Tap. Tap. Good. Yep. Forward. Forward. You got it. Good job. Then slow. Yep. Slow to stop. Good. Okay. I'll have you try that 5-step. Yep. This again. Tap forward. Tap forward. There you go. Slow down to a stop now. Try that again. 5 steps. Good. 3 steps. Good. So here, let's say you do this on your own, right? If you do 3 steps and Pablo overshoots it, you can just go into a turn to correct him to bring him to that leg. Okay? You did correct, but if I can catch him prior, it makes your obedience that much better, okay? Go ahead and pivot off to your right. Tap forward, there you go. Good turn.
I know.
Good. Forward. Slow walk. Slow stop. Very good. Okay. So you see how quick it transitioned to her? That's one of the great things about the collar is that once the dog gets the concept, as long as whoever's handling them is using the same tools or approaches, transfer right over. Okay? Questions so far about this stuff? So, I was happy to do a couple of things before certain turns that you guys were stopping. Do you know what that thing was?
Of course. Looking at him, I don't know.
Right now you came to a stop. What did I have to do just prior to that stop?
Slow down.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah. You guys drive?
yeah.
What do you do before you stop?
Slow down.
And what do you do before you turn?
Slow down.
Right? Otherwise you flip your car, or if you stop too soon, the person behind you is going to crash, right? Same thing for Pablo. This is forever, okay? So we've taught Pablo, you need to start being more mindful of us, but then you have to communicate back to him, right? So like with driving, we have our blinker, we have our horn, we have, pumping our brakes, we have all these things of communication to let other drivers know what we're doing, right? Same thing for this guy. So whenever you're walking, if you're walking for like 15 minutes and Pablo is here, awesome, don't need to do anything. But if you just come to an abrupt stop, expect him to either just keep going, or if you just turn out of nowhere, expect him to not catch it, okay? So I want you to get in the habit of always slowing down prior to those stops, prior to your turn, okay? I don't care what direction the turn is, just always slow down, at least 3 steps, more is perfectly fine, okay? If Pablo is paying attention, what should he do?
Slow down with you.
Correct. And if he's not paying attention, what is he going to do?
Keep going.
Keep going.
And then what are you going to do in response?
Click and turn.
Yes, exactly, okay? So if I see, oh, we got a red light coming up, and I slow down, most people, because they're gonna stop at a red light, when they slow down and the dog's not paying attention, like the dog will forge a bit, and they'll just pull the dog back and then just wait. Because it's like a red light, right? Like it doesn't matter. But obedience-wise, it does matter. And I'll tell them, you're just creating a forever problem. Your dog should be stopping with you. If he can do it here, he can do it anywhere else, right? So do be mindful of that. So you're coming to a red light, you slow down, and then Pablo keeps going, and you stop. Oh, he passed me, turn, tap, tap. And then we would turn again, and then try approaching the red light again so that Pablo stops with us, okay? Again, obedience is very black and white. The more black and white you are with your obedience, the clearer it is for him, okay? So with humans, we have gray area for a lot of things. Dogs don't thrive with gray area, okay? They like very clear boundaries and directions. And then the more you do it now, the less you have to do it in the future, okay? If you every now and then let things slide, your obedience isn't going to ever be completely reliable, and there's going to be those spots of gray area which will work against you at a time when you absolutely need that obedience to work, okay? So questions about any of this stuff that you did here? So he's doing really, really well, so I'm going to just start adding in some more stuff, okay? So the one thing so heel is a package of things, okay? Heel means walk with me, stay with me, and sit when I stop, okay? So right now I didn't worry about the sit because I just wanted to teach you the basic exercise of getting Pablo to walk beside you, okay? But on a lot of those stops, he would just stay standing next to you. So what we're going to do is the same thing. We're going to be moving back and forth, but I'm going to start having you put in more stops. And when you come to that stop, you're going to lightly pull up on your leash until you feel pressure on Pablo, and you're going to give a tap, but you're not going to say sit. Okay, so no words here. Just light pull up, tap. If Pablo puts his foot down, good boy. If he gets excited and jumps up, you would tap and pull up again to reinforce it. And again, good boy. And he should hold that position. And then once you're ready, you'll start moving again, and then you should walk with him. Okay, push it. Whenever you're ready. Good. Let's try 4 more. Good. And now pause right there. So when you slow to that stop, what happened? You kept going, right? So then there, assume the turn, because now you're focused on the sits, right? And this happens to everybody. So as best you can, whenever you see that right shoulder pass your leg, just assume that turn is correct, even though your intention was to stop and reinforce that sit. Okay? Go ahead. There you go. Nothing there. That's good. Good. 3 more. Good move. Yep. Better. There you go. 2 more. Good. Good. Last one. Right, tap forward. Good job. Perfect. Go ahead and bring Pablo back. Slow. And stop. Yep. Good. You were correct on the assumption. You're fine. Let's go to swap handlers. Very good. So I'm going to point out something real quick. Because this happens a lot with couples. Because right now, you put him in the sitting position, and when you swap, most dogs get up. He did it. He thought about it. Like, he went like this, but he kept his butt there, so that was good. Be mindful of this, because when I work with couples, since they're transitioning, they tend to like let it go if the dog gets up, but you want to reinforce that. Okay, remember, it's very black and white. Once you've initiated the command, it's your job to reinforce it. The more you reinforce it now, the less you have to reinforce it in the future. Okay? So I'm going to have to do the same thing, Todd. You'll just move back and forth with Pablo. Yep, there we go. And when you come to those stops, if we see Pablo already putting that butt down, don't need to do anything. Good boy. Wait a moment, and then movement. Okay? Good. Good. All right, good job. Good. 2 more. Good. And last one. Good. Stop. Excellent. All right. So for this first week, we won't be using the word heel. Okay. What initiates this command for Pablo is the tap. Okay. For some dogs, especially like this phase, a lot of times they'll just assume that when you start walking, you'll see them just kind of default into that left side. That's fine. Okay. But the moments, so the easiest way to go about this is, let's say you wake up, you take out Pablo, let him do his bathroom break first, get that working level, and then start your walk. Okay. At that moment, now Pablo, all this stuff goes into effect. Okay. If you decide to give them another potty break, or break the sniff and all that stuff later on in the walk, that's absolutely fine. What we would do is say the word break. Okay, that's the word that we use. Break means your job is done. Okay, that's clocking them off, putting them off the clock, right? So what you would do is you're walking with Pablo. You decide like, oh, there's a nice place for you to go pee. I slow down to that stop. Pablo should sit, and then we wait a moment, and then Pablo will break, and then I lead him to the grass. Okay. When you do this break, I just putting some energy into it, because he's going to start to be a little bit more cautious now. Because now there's rules to things, right? So you might see him kind of hesitate, like, can I, right? Yeah. And it's like, come on, break. And so then he goes over here, and if you find he's gluing to you, it's normal, okay? I ignore the dog, okay? Because a lot of people go, come on, go play. And try to coax the dog to do so. The more you talk to them, the more inclined they are to actually gravitate to you, okay? So I tell them break, and I'll turn to kind of face him, because if you keep walking with Pablo like this, he's gonna think heel, okay? So I'll just pivot to face him, and I just kind of meander, and I'll walk over by a bush or by a tree or something like that, so that he's more inclined to go sniff it, and I just completely am oblivious to him, okay? Once he's done, and you decide, okay, we're ready to go, you would simply just start walking again, and tap, bring him to your left side, okay? And then at that point, he's off the break, everything that we just covered, then everything's supposed to go.
Okay? No, like, keyword to get him back in after the break?
Not yet. That'll be next class. Okay, so the reason why I don't say heel now is when I used to do that in the very beginning of my career, because people feel bad about the remote a lot of times, they'll use the word more and the remote less, right? Because they don't want to do that. And I'll see them on class 2 and they're going, heel, come on, heel, right? And they keep saying the word and the remote's sitting in the hand. I'm like, clearly your dog doesn't know what the word is because you haven't enforced it enough, right? So if I remove the word, it forces people to have to use that remote throughout that first week, and then we label it. The other reason why I do that is, let's say in the neighborhood where Pablo has like more friends, or like he's familiar with the environment, you might see him testing a bit more because he's not used to structure there. Okay, so then you have to transfer that structure into that area. So dogs don't generalize like humans do. So you can teach a kid to play piano, and they can play this piano, and they can play that piano. You can go to the Guitar Center and play that piano, right? Dogs don't do that. He doesn't think, oh, I know how to walk nicely at Oz Park, and it's the same thing as walking nicely in the neighborhood. Okay, you have to reinforce it. Crap, I just lost my train of thought there. I was talking about dogs. Not using the word. Break.
I have a question. If
Sure.
I'm walking with him and
Yes.
he's doing good, blah, 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 and he sees a rollerblader because he hates it,
Rollers and skateboards.
Sure.
do you just tap it until he comes in the
So
back?
what we would do, that's a very good question, is if you have the space to, if this is the sidewalk and this is like the grass to the curb, it's easiest at this stage to step aside, have Pablo go in a sitting position, and then you would shorten your leash. Okay, so go ahead and shorten your leash, Todd, like that. Okay, so the reason for this is, if you look at it, it's not tight. Okay, it's slack, but you're limiting range of motion. Because if you keep it like you had before, about 3 to 4 feet of slack, and if you decided to lunge, he's got 3 to 4 feet to lunge forward, right? So this gives you more leverage over Pablo physically, but it also limits just how far he can go, right? So for now, it's much easiest to control a dog from going into reactivity by being stationary, okay? So reactivity is I would categorize it as a moving type behavior with the dog lunging forward and barking and all that stuff, right? And walking is a moving behavior. So if you're walking with Pablo and you're trying to walk past it, it almost always in the beginning doesn't work because you're already in motion and it's super easy for him to just jump into that into reactivity. But if you're stepped aside and this is a passive stationary state, he's at a 0, he has to build to that moving state. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, and I also have a means of direction for him. He has a reference point here. So if I step aside, do you know what his threshold is? Like how close it is before he blows up?
No, it's different every time. It's
yeah.
depending on the sound. So like if they're
Sure.
on like
If it's,
something
yeah,
that
it's like a
makes
loud
lot of sound.
skateboard or a loud rollerblader versus one he doesn't know. So
Okay.
I mean, it can freak out if you're close to that bench.
Sure. Okay. So the moment notice the skateboarder or whatever that sound, I want you to just assume step to the side and then go, where is it? Okay. You shorten your leash, you're like, where's it? Oh, it's right there. And then I watch Pablo. Okay. And if Pablo's looking like this, right? I'm telling you, it's probably going to happen.
Yeah.
He's already like showing the intensity.
Right.
So you would simply give a tap right there. Okay. You wouldn't say anything. You would just tap. And what we should see, if we have the appropriate number, is Pablo goes from one side to the other. Right. And he completely changes his behavior. Okay. And it's going to be very noticeable. If you remote him and you see he's still very intense, that tells me, 14 or whatever that we're on isn't high enough. So then I might jump to like 18 or 20 and give another tap. And then if you see the boom, oh, sorry, and he settles, good. And then I see what happens as that stimulus gets closer, right? So for most dogs, like this window right here, is they'll do good, and then right here is when the blow up happens, right? So not a big deal. You have your leash shortened, you start tapping, and then you want to always pull straight up, okay? Never pull back and never pull up and back. Always straight up and tapping. He should settle. If he doesn't settle, and I'm at 20, what does that tell me? Too high, right? So the next time I hear rollerblader or skateboarder, I step aside. I know 20 didn't work last time. Let me put it to 25 preemptively, okay? And the same approach. So if he looks interested, I tap him on 25. If he yips, just let it go, because you're waiting for this window and you're trying to get this number, right? So maybe 20 is okay for anything further, but once this window happens, 20 isn't enough. Maybe you need to go to 45 or 50. But if you're going from 20 to 50 here, it's a very small time frame to make that adjustment. Does that make sense? So you have to kind of let some things go. Ideally, we don't want the yip or anything like that, right? But behavior and obedience are very different. When it comes to behavior, it's just consequence, okay? And it's whatever the consequence that's appropriate to the dog. But we always start low and we work our way up. Most people think when we apply a corrective measure or a punisher, they think, oh, you must just come in on 100 and just like make the dog roll all over. I'm like, no, that's not how it works at all. We start low, work our way up, and if I'm learning 20 didn't work, next time 25. 25 didn't work, next time 30, right? And I'm just building off of all those previous experiences until one day it's like, oh crap, man, who needs 85 when it comes to this window right here? So every time I step aside, I'm already at 85, 90, and I'm ready for that moment. And then ideally, we stop it and he learns lunging and barking at rollerbladers or skateboarders isn't worth my time because it's a very harsh consequence, okay? But obedience-wise, he could be perfect on 14, right? Very different levels, okay? And dog logic and human logic is very different. I've had dogs that'll be full-blown reactive and the owner will max out and they'll, pop, pop, pop. And the dog yelps, they'll keep barking and lunging and they'll get them to stop, but it's a constant process. And they'll say, like, Jesse, why does my dog keep doing that? Like, 127 is very uncomfortable. Like, it's a dog, right? If it's worth it to them, they're gonna take the hits. They're gonna like, yeah, sure. So then we have to do preemptive corrections where we might do a higher number prior to the explosion, so then the dog thinks, crap.
It's gonna happen again if I...
Exactly, and it happens before I even do anything, so it's not even worth it at that point, right? Every case is different. I don't think you're gonna have that much issue with Pablo. We've not seen that. Have we seen that side of Pablo? Nope. Right? Yeah.
Next time you see rollerbladers.
Yeah, I don't know if you've had rollerbladers.
Yeah, we get skateboarders, rollerbladers, bicycles, and stuff like that.
Rollerbladers are the worst.
But we'll keep an eye on it whenever he's at daycare. And don't be discouraged. Like if you feel like it's making it worse, okay? It's not. It's that you've just not come to that number to dissuade him. Okay, so if we're like at 35 and he's like barking even louder, it's either frustration or you're just annoying him, right? Because you haven't capped the behavior. That's why we just keep increasing it little by little until we find that number, and then once you know it, you can just jump straight to it. Okay. Theoretically speaking, this exercise that we're doing now should resolve the reactivity without actually having to do that stuff. Okay, because Pablo's not had formal discipline.
Right.
I know you guys have the prong collar, which is great, much better than anything else. Have you ever used it to like correct them for things?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Like pulling when he's pulling on a walk.
Yeah, like popping them and stuff like that? Okay. Have you ever heard of them yip when you've done a correction? Okay. So when it comes to prong corrections, typically when people apply them, you're doing the pull, which is correct, but the way it's being done is incorrect, right? So it should be a very sharp snapping motion to create this, whereas most people will pull and tug. So it creates the closure, and then the pull in, and then the relaxation, when it should be pop, okay? Because you're trying to mimic a dog bite.
Right.
So like, let's say you took him out, and you're gonna do a quick potty break with him, and you don't use your e-collar, okay? And you have him on the prong. And I see skateboarder coming. I would do the same thing, but now, since I don't have remote, I would do a correctional pop with that prong collar. And if you hear a yip, don't worry about it, right? You're worried about what happens after the correction. So if you do that prong correction and he yelps, and he might even scoot back, and you see the skateboarder go by and he doesn't do anything, you go, oh, it worked, right? And then I just gauge, what did I do? Was it a 6 out of 10? Was it an 8 out of 10, you know? Or you might find he's being reactive and you're giving him your harshest tugs and pops and he's still blowing up. It's because he's at a 20, and even though you're giving your hardest 10, you're only at a 10 and you can't match that 20, okay? That's why I like e-collar, again, because I can match the dog without physicality. And it doesn't matter if one person's 6'6" and the other person's 5'0", like them pressing it at 45 and them pressing it at 45 is gonna be the same, okay? Other questions?
Should he be wearing his e-collar when we take him to daycare? Like,
You can if you want. We
Yeah.
reinforce stuff at the daycare. You know, we reinforce training. But if you forget it, no big deal.
Yeah.
You know, or you can bring him with this prong.
I
Other
usually just bring in with this like harness because that's what I can put in the seatbelt with.
right.
So
And we have our prongs in the facility too. So like when we take them on the walks, we just use ours. If you want us to like reinforce training and stuff, we're more than happy to. You know, it doesn't cost you guys. Like I tell everybody, if you have training tools, bring them because it makes our lives so much easier.
yeah, I mean, I would definitely bring the collar and the remote.
Yeah, and we label it so that we don't mix up people's collars and stuff. Other questions?
As far as our prong collar, so we actually had you guys accidentally left one of yours on him one time,
Oh, sure.
and it was so much tighter than we ended it on him.
Sure.
But that's also because you have to, it's like hard to get this stuff on the prongs.
Sure.
So she's not literally strong enough to do it.
I can't put it on top.
So it's only me able to do it. So if I'm not there, essentially it's not like, so we just have it super loose on him
Sure.
He didn't put
so
it
it
over his head.
can go over his head.
Sure.
So I don't know if that is like the complete wrong way to do it or if it doesn't matter that much because all you're doing is a quick.
Doesn't really matter since you're doing remote now. It does matter in the sense of the correctional because if it's really loose, at some point that chain runs out, right? So if it's too loose and the chain runs out, you're not getting any of that enclosure, right? The reason for fitting it more snug is it's actually supposed to be up here, right?
Okay.
And for him, it's like down here. At the base of the neck, dogs are more tough. There's more muscle there. Here, there's less muscle, so you get more cross or less power.
See, I think we always put it over his other collar, like towards the back. So that's probably why I wasn't doing it much. It was like
And then
around
you get the
base.
collar between it, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, with remote, it really doesn't matter anymore. If you're going to continue using that prong collar, I don't like them, but they do make like alligator clip where it's a snap to take the collar on and off. The reason why I don't like those is because that snap, if you do a correction, can pop off. So a lot of times, if you get like a slip chain and it's fitted super loose, it's as a backup in case the prong pops off, the slip is still on. Or some people will carabiner the chain of the prong collar to their flat collar, so if it does pop off, it's still secured to the dog. Okay.
That's probably what we would do.
Yeah.
If we were to do that.
Otherwise, yeah, as long as you're doing remote, it really doesn't matter. You may even start to see him being a bit more affected by the prong because of this. Because now this makes dogs calmer, is what I tell people, because it communicates to the brain. And they become a lot more perceptive and receptive of like information that you're giving them. That then what was seemingly not effective with the prong is now effective. Okay. And then I also get dogs where it's like they're just so physically tough that they're like the prong is like a no-go. Okay. Other questions? For your homework this week, this exercise. Okay. If you want to start approaching that reactivity towards skateboards and stuff, I know because you guys are you in East Lakeview?
We're like right up, called like Halstead and like.
Oh,
it's
sure,
like Lincoln
sure.
And, like right by the Illuminati's.
Yeah. So like, I know if you go east towards the lake, there's that path. There's usually like a lot of rollerbladers and
By the
like
lakeshore
bikers
path?
there. Yeah. If you're looking for that kind of stuff, skateboarders, here we get them.
Skateboarding, not just going down.
Yeah, rollerblades, stuff like that is. I'm pro like confronting things and all that stuff, and like just tackle from the beginning. Because the more you do that, the more we cover essentially, right? Do be wise, and if the setup, the situation, if it's too tight or whatever, doesn't look to be to your advantage, feel free to always just remove yourself and just let it happen, right? Until you get to the point where it just doesn't phase him anymore. Always want to be facing whatever is happening, making sure to shorten that leash. Your responsibility is, Pablo. We know that this is going to pass, so I can kind of use my ears and my peripheral range to see what's going on here. But I want to watch Pablo's ears, his mouth, his eyes, his posture, his tail, or his nub, all that stuff. And the moment you see anything that's pre-reactivity, the ears puffing forward, you would remote that. Okay? If it causes a blow up, did it make things worse? He was already thinking about it. It's just that it's kind of like like somebody's already pissed off and you say one wrong thing and all of a sudden yeah, exactly, right? You just as best you can try to shut it down. Okay? Eventually he would learn, or he will learn, tap doesn't mean escalate, tap means de-escalate. Okay? In terms of the walking stuff, whenever you go for a walk anywhere, you want to be employing your heel. So you train as you go about your walking stuff. Okay? If you're trying to get point A to point B and you're out of time and you're like, I can't continue to do this, you just stop, have him sit, wait a moment, break, and then let him do whatever. Okay, as long as there's a clear defining break in between, it's not going to affect your obedience if he's walking and meandering all of this. Breaks for the restroom. Dogs learn better in shorter chunks. So if you did like 4 15-minute sessions for now, that would be ideal. If all you have is 1 solid hour, it's perfectly fine. Remember, as long as he's in position, we don't need to do all this craziness. Okay? Just keep moving forward. If you want to test if he's paying attention after like 10, 15 minutes, you don't stop abruptly, you don't just turn out of nowhere, change your pace. And slowing down is the best one. Because if you slow down, it's very obvious because he's going to pass you. Speeding up is easy for him because he's going to be back here. Oh crap, you're speeding up, he's going to catch up, no problem. So slowing down is the best way to test if he's actually paying attention.
And that's when you do the turn.
If he passes. Correct. Yep. Your turn should become less and less each day. That means you're making progress. To make that progress, it's very important that we have the right working number. If you feel every day you're turning 100 times and you're on 14, then 14 is not making any difference, right? Then I try 17, 18. Maybe 100 turns comes down to 50 turns, but still 50 turns every day. 20, 21, right? You're just playing with that number and you're just going by your previous experiences. And then one day you'll figure out like, oh, 24, I've only had to turn once in 2 weeks. There's your number. Okay? Anything else?
I know we're not going to be here for the next weekend.
Oh, sure.
So we're skipping weeks, so should we just continue the same thing?
Correct, yeah, same stuff. If you want, you can take a look at our YouTube channel. We post all the lessons up there. So this is real typical standard lesson 1 stuff. If you want to skip ahead and go like, what's for lesson 2? You can pull one up, just watch someone else, start incorporating it. If you get it, awesome. You come back like, hey Jesse, we cheated a little bit. We skipped ahead. I would go, show me. You're like, this is what we know. I'm like, hey, great job. Let's teach some other stuff. Okay? Cool. So I don't really limit things according to length of time. I limit things to like how fast and how well does the owner do. Okay? If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Okay? Awesome. And then if anybody's like, when you're training and stuff, feel free to always no, for training, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You guys got 2 people within a span of 3 minutes.
Right.
Look at that cute guy. Let's go say hi.
Everyone wants to say hi to him.
Yeah.
I think I actually saw you a week or 2 ago at Parsons.
Yeah.
We walked in, I didn't see you. She was like, I think that's Jesse, and then you had left before we got up.
Oh, really? Yeah. I was there with my friend. I was on a Wednesday.